the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Here's your pot. The ballots and the extra cash are all here.
Good. This will rig the election nicely.
Perfect. Stay
Here's
quiet.
your sticker for voting today.
Thank you. I need to see your photo ID for verification. Of course. Here you go.
Here's my ID.
Perfect. Thank you. Here's your sticker. Hi, ready to go. Here's my ID. Great. Safety first.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. There's a SAVE Act, and it shouldn't even be a debate. I was watching John Husted, who's going to be a great, he's going up against Sherrod Brown, and I know John a little bit. He's the senator that stepped in for J.D. Vance when he became vice president, and John Husted was put forth an amendment on voter ID, 5 forms of ID. Very logical, very easy legislation to pass. And it should be like 5 seconds. Everybody says, yeah, and then you pass the thing and it moves on. But to hear Chuck Schumer go on and on about voters, voter intimidation, making it harder to vote. And I bring up John Husted because he's going up against Sherrod Brown. Sherrod Brown was back in the race. He got knocked out. Got knocked out by Bernie Moreno. So now in Ohio, you have Bernie Moreno, who's a fantastic senator. He's turned out to be very great. Very proud of Bernie Moreno. He was a great businessman. He's been good at his life up to this point. You know, can you make the transition to politics? And the answer with him is absolutely yes. He's great. Yeah, he's been fantastic. And then John Husted stepped in to take the other Senate spot once J.D. Vance was promoted into the White House to be vice president with Trump. So, but Husted has to fight for that spot, that seat. He was appointed to it by Governor DeWine, and now he has to run and run up against. And Sherrod Brown wants one of those seats back. Since he got knocked out by Bernie Moreno, he wants to knock off Husted. So the whole rhetoric behind the Sherrod Brown, John Husted bit, and then Chucky Schumer getting involved in the SAVE Act, and should Thune have gone to recess and taken off for the holidays when you have so many critical elements on the table. Of course, they should have stayed until all this was passed. And you use the leverage of everybody wanting to go home for Easter as your way to get votes. You can't play it nice when you're padding the skids. You got to expect that you're going to not get anybody to drive to a narrative. You got to use pressure to get results. And they should not have gone home for Easter, for a recess at all. So the debate, though, between essentially Husted and Sherrod Brown is the Democrat platform of these voter mandates. Voter ID is going to make it harder for people to vote. And that tells you what they already knew all along. And I'll say it, and I get dinged. Everything I say, I even tried to change accounts. My name is so well known in Google because of my stance on COVID and election fraud, because I've openly talked about it. I don't dance around it. I've laid out the receipts many times over, and I still talk about it. And so I'm dinged on search engines big time. So you don't see a lot of, and also I do get a tremendous amount of hits, but you got to understand the counters. I wouldn't do it if I didn't get a lot of hits. If I didn't get out to all the people that I want to see. You have to understand that if you're just doing essentially home videos kind of stuff, and you're talking about light topics, you're not a threat to the Google machine. So you can get good views on those. And there's a point to this because it's about the rig system and what Sherrod Brown's defending. So there's a lot of advertisers out there when you have some content that they know is hot, and they want you to pay them to basically turn your counter on. So they want to suppress your counting views, and they want you to pay for advertisement, so they take your counter off. X finally has come up with a scheme like that, which I haven't done. But if you pay the ultra premium thing, you can basically have the algorithms work in your favor, and you'll get a lot of views and you'll get visibility. But essentially, the way the game works, people find you anyway. They see you, they watch you, but the counter doesn't indicate it because they control it. It's the same thing they do on YouTube. At least that has been with me. If you're putting out threatening political content that Google doesn't like, of course they're going to turn your counter off. If you pay the money, they'll turn it on because you're buying the counter essentially. Otherwise, they're going to suppress it and discourage people from saying, "Oh my gosh, he only has a few views. He must not have anything important to say." That's how the game works. That rigged system has worked in the background for a long time, and it certainly works in elections. And the election fraud scheme is very real. And that's why it's at an impasse. There are a lot of rhino Republicans who have made deals with Democrats over the years. They know those Democrats should have never been in those positions because election fraud made them close. The Beshear race down in Kentucky. Andy Beshear would have never been governor if not for election fraud. There was a lot of close elements in that race, and Louisville and Lexington had election fraud instigated by the teachers' unions, which is enough to put it over the top. And most of these, and you go back and look at the receipts, and it's just the same kind of method that happened in 2020. And anybody that says, it's a conspiracy that it happened. No, it's not a conspiracy at all. It's you have electronic voting machines have been proven to be unstable, and they can be flipped. Unless you check the paper receipt, in Ohio, and I've talked to Frank LaRosa about this, and he'll swear that the elections are secure in Ohio. And I think he thinks that. I'm sure he believes it. Problem is your regional voting precincts, you have a digital footprint where you vote, and that goes off to wherever, and then gives you a receipt, and you verify that receipt before you go off and get your little "I voted" sticker. Well, if someone doesn't validate that the result and the receipt are the same, then there's an opportunity for you to flip some votes, and that has been determined to proven true. And so all these lawsuits of intimidation, this is the way lawyers work, is they think you can't challenge them in court and you can't afford the lawyer, so they drag you in so that they can drain your bank account and destroy you so you can't make a position. Then they take your surrender or your settlement out of court or whatever deal they bring as a proof that their client is clean. And it just means they had more money to throw at the legal system than you had judges willing to participate in that election fraud. It's the same kind of deal that we're talking about with the rigging of the viewerships and on social media. If you're not a threat, they don't care. If you're a threat, they care. They'll sit on your numbers and hope that people don't notice that you have huge followings. That's why you see that sometimes I'll take a picture on my admin page. I'll see like all the real hits because they're showing you what you really have, but can you display it to the public? And to do that, you pay your breakaway fee, which I typically don't do because I'm not going to be extorted like that. And, I just put the material out and let it do what it's going to do. And that's how our attitude should be towards voting. Voting should be a representation of what people really want, and then they get the government that runs their lives. But the rig to put the finger on, different candidates and try to keep it close and try to have an even 50-50 House so that Chuck Schumer can have the kind of power he's had to kind of hold things up, to not pay TSA. If we had enforced election security years ago, there would be more than a 60 vote majority to pass get TSA funding. The only reason that Democrats can hold it hostage is because election fraud gave them that ability. And they're using it just like terrorists would use any method to hold hostage air travel so that you can have continued election fraud by not having a SAVE Act and not having election security. So Chuck Schumer said it himself. He knows if you take off all the illegal people that should not be on the voter rolls, people who aren't actually citizens, dead people that are fraud, loose mail-in voting that they have, the digital machines that are flipped in the background by tech specialists that sit in a van in the middle of some populated city and flip the votes on those machines because they had the passcodes that were given to them by the machine sellers or the machine manufacturers in some backroom deal. which is why they do it, so they can keep the balance of power in ways that big finance can control. Yeah, this is what's really going on. Chuck Schumer knows it's about 20 million people. And I've been saying that all along. There's no way Kamala Harris got into the 70 millions. Places where she did perform well were blue states where they didn't have voter ID. Places where they did have voter ID, Trump won easily. And that was all the big red states, all the big battleground states, where they were blue states, blue policy, loose voting rules, lots of open, with so much at stake. Why wouldn't people think that you would cheat? I mean, you have to have security protocols at an ATM when you're exchanging money. When you buy a pack of gum at a convenience store, there's cameras and there's security. There's methods to make sure when you go through self-checkout at Walmart, there's someone there watching. Make sure you don't not scan something. Because most people will be honest, but there are a large percentage of people who will cheat. They'll scan one thing, not scan the next thing, and put it in their bag and walk off. And on elections, when you have so much at stake and there's so much to do, you can't possibly imagine that you have secure elections. At all these opportunities for error at every precinct there is around the country, there's going to be a few here and there, especially in high density populated areas, where there's going to be some election fraud because there's too much at stake. So it's naive to think that it hasn't been happening, and it has, and that's why it's close, and the number is about 20 million. And Chuck Schumer said it. You're going to make about 20 million people, make it harder for them to vote. Yeah, because those voters are voting Democrat, and they shouldn't have been voting to begin with because they're either illegal, or they're double voting, or they already passed away, or they're parts of a voter roll that has room for election fraud by manipulating a digital account. But there's about 20 million people, too much for Democrats, and they know it. And if you get security to the election process, they're not going to be able to stay in power. And it's only close because they have been able to utilize election fraud in the past. And the threat now is that's going to be taken away, and they're going to lose all their ability to have extortion terrorism. And that means people like TSA would get paid. And that means that you have funding. That means you have your 60 vote majority in the Senate without any kind of problem. You'd have certainly, I bet you there's 60 seats in the House that would be Republican right now if we had not allowed election fraud to occur in the past. So yeah, it gets me dinged to talk about it. I really don't care. Election fraud is a big problem. It's been a problem, and the SAVE Act is critical. Thune should have. Trump's nice to him. Thune might be a nice guy, but this is critical. If you get behind election security, you'll have your 60 vote majorities. It might take a couple election cycles to get there because you have to rotate out all the Democrats that were there illegally. They're not going to hold their seats because they never won them to begin with. But if you get behind election security, Republicans will easily win the House and the Senate by large majorities. And Democrats won't even have a pathway to anytime soon gain a majority again. So there isn't any risk. You just have to have people that get behind it. But you see how upset people are over John Huston's proposal on the amendment for just voter ID, and how contentious that is. And you listen to what Sherrod Brown's saying, who wants to knock off Houston and get a Senate seat back in Ohio. And his statements are, you're making it harder for people to vote. Well, that's kind of good. You don't want, because when they say that, they mean you're making it harder for us to cheat. It's not harder for people to vote. We made it very easy for people to vote. You go to your polling place, it's always in your community, you vote, you get your sticker, you go home and say, I voted. Really easy. You can't make it much easier than that. But if you do, now you're opening up the doors for cheating. And that's the voter abuses, the mail-in ballots, the digital flipping switches from some van somewhere. paying people for their vote for a bag of pot in a Walmart parking lot. And I say that all the time because I know it's been happening. I know it's occurred. There's lots of proof that it has been going. And judges don't want to open up that can of worms because some of them probably got elected from election fraud, and they know it. And so a lot of people have power that should not have power because election fraud put them there. Beshear down in Kentucky, definitely one of them. He's definitely won that first term through election fraud. Biden won through election fraud. He was installed. And I would go to say that Obama won because of election fraud. There was a massive suppression. There was you saw it just in the suppression of the evidence that he knew known terrorists from Weather Underground, Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dohrn, his relationship with them. He launched his political life in their living room, and then no one wanted to talk about it. And you think that there's no election fraud out there? Give me a break. And now Republicans are talking about cracking down on it, which they should. And John Husted, who's been doing a good job as a senator and deserves to win that seat again because he's a good guy, put forth just some common sense amendments, 5 forms of ID. Can you show that when you go to vote? Yes or no? And if no, then you shouldn't be voting. If yes, go over to the booth, vote, here's your sticker. And then you have your representative republic. And Chuck Schumer's against that because he knows that there's at least 20 million people who have been voting who shouldn't be. And the threat to them and their power is that if they can't keep those people voting, they don't have jobs. And Sherrod Brown knows it too. He has no chance unless all the illegals and disenfranchised people and the fake ballots, the flipping in the digital machines, all of the things they've been doing all this time to keep it close. If that's taken away, he has no chance. So he has no choice but to say, you're making it harder to vote. Vote no on the SAVE Act. Vote no on voter ID. We gotta have ways to keep people who are illegal voting because that's the only way we stay close. And that's the scam. And if Thune wants to have those majority votes, and the House and Johnson and everybody wants to keep strong Republican majorities, you got to face the facts and understand voter fraud made it close. If you make it so that the elections are secure, then the majorities will go dramatically to Republicans because that's where people are. That's what they're going to vote for, and Democrats know it. That's why they're against the SAVE Act. And that's why some Republicans aren't vigilant about it because they know that the system has been rigged and it's going to expose it right away. Same thing happened with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Everybody knew that Joe Biden won the election rigged, and if it's another toe-to-toe matchup with Trump, which is where it was going, they had to create a variable so they could put Kamala Harris in there because otherwise Biden was going to look horrible. And they hoped that maybe Kamala Harris, being a woman, might cover some of the bleed out. But they know, all the insiders know they win through election fraud. And that's what's going on here. And that's what's going on with the Sherrod Brown, John Husted race. If you have election integrity and you pass these things and make it harder all over the country, and you maintain that voter ID law, and in Ohio, same thing with cracking down on all the other methods that cause things to be close. If it's not close, Husted wins easily. Or if you don't have all the mail-ins and all the crazy stuff that goes on the sidelines, we do have voter ID in Ohio. It makes it very hard for someone like Sherrod Brown to gain on John Husted. But in blue states where they don't have voter ID, that's how Democrats keep it close. That's what they've done in Colorado. That's why Tina Peters was put in jail, because she was revealing something they had to contain. So they put her in jail as a senior citizen, really, which is a death sentence, to hold the story down. It's a crime, and they openly are committing it, and Chuck Schumer admitted it in his proposal to go against John Husted's amendment on the voter IDs. If you can't even get behind voter IDs, and you're not looking for honest elections. You're looking to cheat. And that's the hard truth that nobody wants to admit to. And yeah, I'll say it. And yeah, it hurt my numbers. It hurt the way that the views on my social media comes up, but I really don't care. People see it anyway. I get hundreds, thousands of emails almost every day, and I can't read them all. Can't possibly read them all. So I know what the real stats are out there. But it's a rigged system, and we're trying to bust that rigged system. It's rigged on the media side. It's rigged at the government side. On the government accounting side, definitely rigged. And I've had a front seat to it for many years, and I've been willing to openly talk about it. A lot of people know it too, but they aren't so willing to talk about it because they need to profit off the system itself. And that's part of the problem. And everybody's got to put their big pants on and start dealing with the true intentions of what the constituents out there really want. That's voter intention. And what the Democrats know is that they're going to lean in the Republican way, and that they're going to lose all their power when that intention is known by honest elections. That's why they're against the SAVE Act. That's why they're against voter ID. And that's why Sherrod Brown is against it, because he has no chance of winning unless there's some form of election fraud that can put him out ahead. Because if they don't have Democrats that vote illegally, they can't win. And that's the hard truth. And everybody in positions of power that can do something about it, got to have courage and face those facts. And if you do that, you'll be rewarded with major majorities. In every House and Senate seat in the country, at the state level and the federal level. Try it. Election fraud's good. Good for the bad guys. Good for the Democrats. But if you want secure elections and you want to maintain majorities, vote for the SAVE Act, vote for amendments for the voter IDs, and take election fraud off the table. And you'll see what people really want out there. And you have to have courage to give them what they want, because that's how a republic is supposed to work. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you haven't read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
Thank you for listening.